been withdrawn, so I call Claire Sugden to ask the first question. Ms Sugden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question number 1.
I can initiate infrastructure, and I call the Minister for Infrastructure, Nichola Mallon.
I fully recognise how important planning is in protecting our environment, in shaping local communities and, of course, in supporting and developing our economy, now more than ever as we move into recovery from the pandemic. I am also very aware of the need for significant improvement in the performance of our two-tier planning system, particularly when it comes to statutory consultees. My department has been working on a number of fronts to improve the system, including the establishment of a cross-departmental planning forum to take forward recommendations from a report into the role of statutory consultees in the planning process. A key focus of the work of the planning forum is to improve the response times to meet the 21-day statutory consultation target, particularly in relation to major planning applications. I recognise that the level of statutory consultee responses that are needed to respond to consultations on a timely basis is a critical issue and particularly relevant given the increasing number and complexity of planning application consultations. I recently raised the resourcing issue around planning consultations with the Finance Minister, and my Permanent Secretary has written to other relevant Permanent Secretaries seeking their assistance to ensure adequate funding is available for their consultation response teams. I have also specifically asked to be briefed on a monthly basis by those planning statutory consultees within my own department so that issues impacting on their performance can be addressed appropriately and in a timely manner. A number of measures have been taken to ensure that this important work is placed on a sustainable and improved footing, including an inescapable resource bid in the 2022-25 budget exercise to meet the funding requirement for the additional staff needed within the department. The Department has also undertaken a review of the implementation of the Planning Act 2011, which has identified 16 areas where we could further improve performance of the system for all stakeholders, including the Department for Infrastructure, councils, statutory consultees, developers and the wider public. And work on this will continue to be progressed in the coming months.
I call Claire Sugden for a supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for her response. The Minister and I met recently just to discuss this issue, and during that meeting I expressed my frustration on behalf of not only local applicants but also significant investors to Northern Ireland who are telling me that they're taking their multi-million-pound investments elsewhere. I appreciate the Minister has talked about this being a cross-departmental piece of work, which I entirely agree with. Could she give us more detail on what this will entail and how we can genuinely put forward aims and objectives so that we can fix this issue once and for all?
I thank the member for her question, and as I've said, the issue of statutory consultee response times is an important one and one where we need to see improvement. In terms of the cross-departmental planning forum that my department has established, it's focused on improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the planning system by agreeing, prioritising and implementing recommendations and actions which emerged from the report into the role of statutory consultees in the planning process. A work programme involving 30 key actions has been developed, and in total 19 actions have been completed, with the remainder expected to be completed in 2022. I want to assure the member that I recognise the importance of this issue. I have a firm focus on it, and that's why I'm requesting monthly updates to make sure that we continue to make progress in this really important area.
Call Jonathan Buckley.
For answers thus far, Minister, you'll realise that there's chronic concern in the industry regarding the performance of planning, particularly when local governments, I think it's to date, not one local development plan has been completed by local councils, in fact maybe even get to stage 1. 4 regionally significant applications in the system. I asked the Chief Planner at committee 2 weeks ago how many had been submitted, regionally significant applications submitted in the last 12 months. He was unable to answer. Perhaps the Minister could.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand, but I am happy to provide the member with it in writing following this question time.
I call Cal.
The Minister will be familiar with the proposals by the Dairy Minister to change the rules in relation to single farm payment, making the claims from 3 hectares up to 10 hectares. This will impact on small farmers and those people who wish to reside in the countryside in the future. So could I ask the Minister, what assessment has she done in relation to this here to ensure that we have sustainable farms in the countryside going forward?
Maybe the Minister can answer if she so wishes, but it'd be better addressed maybe to another Minister, given that that's at proposal stage just yet.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It is an important issue, and I want to assure the member that while it doesn't fall to my portfolio, it is led by the Environment and Agriculture Minister. My officials are engaging with their colleagues in DAERA because we recognise the importance of the issue, and that engagement will be ongoing, and I'm happy to keep the member updated on that.
I call Alan Chambers.
Deputy Speaker, would the Minister accept that many of the delays in the planning system are caused by departments under her responsibility, like rivers, roads and Northern Ireland Water on many occasions? And has she any detailed plans to improve this situation, especially when we see the impact on private sector investment as currently been witnessed in Bangor? Thank you.
Thank the member for his question, and it is an important issue. We have been trying to increase capacity within roads and rivers by the reallocation of staff. As I said, I've also been requesting monthly updates to ensure that we're continuing to make progress among the statutory consultees that fall within my department, roads and rivers. I also submitted an inescapable bid to the Finance Minister in terms of the 3-year multi-year budget. I identified this as inescapable because we do need to increase capacity within the statutory consultees, not just, I have to say, within my own department, but I'm also mindful of the Northern Ireland Environment Agency as well, and that's why my Permanent Secretary has also been engaging with her counterparts to ensure that we can get sufficient resources, because we absolutely do need to address that. In saying that, though, we are seeing record high numbers of applications coming forward that are very complex as well. But of course, there is a need to continue to improve, given the importance of this to our economy and environment.
I call Andrew Muir.
Deputy Speaker, on the issue of planning, last year your department put a hold on Ards and North Down Borough Council given approval for the Queen's Parade development in Bangor. 13 months later, we're still waiting. When will you, as Minister, intervene and give the green light for this to go ahead and lift the holding directions been imposed on Ards and North Down Borough Council?
The member and I have met to discuss this issue, and he will be aware of the work that's been ongoing between my department and the Council and other key stakeholders in this to try to make progress. In terms of the holding direction, it was issued by my department in February last year, and it is currently in place. The assessment of the notification is currently being finalised, and it is my intention to respond to the Council as soon as possible with a decision as to whether or not the application should be referred to my department for determination. I can assure you that I am mindful of the importance of reaching a decision on this matter and to avoid any unnecessary delays.
Thank you,
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for her answers so far on this important matter. And can I ask her what impact the latest collapse of the Executive will have on planning decisions? Thank you.
Notwithstanding the collapse of the Executive, my officials are continuing to progress all the planning applications before the Department for its consideration to a decision point. Indeed, I have continued to take planning decisions, such as the decision to approve the reserve matters details for the Maritime Museum at Ebrington Square in Derry, and I will certainly be continuing to take decisions where I can and where I am satisfied that it would not require referral.
Call Rachel Wood.
Mr Deputy Speaker, Minister, be aware that a major problem with the planning system is lack of openness, transparency and public participation. So can I ask the Minister if she agrees with me that we must have equal rights of appeal here for communities in Northern Ireland?
I thank the member for her question, and she has raised this issue on a number of occasions. The legislative and the structural changes to the planning system, which came into effect with the new two-tier system in 2015, are designed to deliver an inclusive front-loaded system with a stronger third-party engagement and local democratic accountability. There are concerns that the introduction of a third-party rights of appeal at the end of the development management process could undermine an applicant's commitment to community engagement at the start. The risks reducing certainty and could impact on the effectiveness and efficiency of the planning system at a time when it needs to be responsive to sustainable economic recovery. Though I have asked my officials to keep this matter under review, and this will include consideration of recommendations to emerge from the work of the Planning Engagement Partnership that my department is undertaking, given the importance of having communities involved and at the heart of planning decisions.
I call Jim Allister.
We can all make valid criticisms of the planning process, but is it not also fair to say that it's not always the planning departments which are at fault? Take the York Street Interchange. It was 2016 that the department issued a notice to proceed. Now, I know there have been legal challenges since, but is it not the case that it is the department that's dragging his feet and maybe even playing constituency politics with it?
I would absolutely refute that I play constituency politics with issues that fall within my role as Minister. As the member rightly identifies, York Street Interchange has been subject to legal challenge. We also had a 3-year hiatus where there was no minister in place. When I took up the post, I was very clear straight away that I recognised the strategic importance of this project, but that we absolutely needed to make sure that we get the project right, that we get it right for all those who will use it, but also for the community who lives and around it. That's why I carried out an independent assessment. That report is complete, and we're currently engaging with all of our key stakeholders so that I'm in a position to be able to announce next steps.
Iarmir Dolores Kelly on case to Curry. Called Dolores Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question 2, Minister.
I was pleased to see my proposal for the establishment of an Infrastructure Commission here included as a key action in the Executive's COVID-19 recovery plan. I believe an Infrastructure Commission would deliver a step change in how we plan and deliver infrastructure here by providing a long-term shared vision and agreed approach to infrastructure planning and delivery, and an informed basis on which future infrastructure needs can be identified. A cross-departmental group led by TEO has been established to progress this matter and has had several meetings to date. I continue to offer my support and that of my officials to this group and hope that rapid progress can be made to deliver on this key commitment, given it is, I believe, the game changer our economy, our environment and community needs.
Case Brescia, Dolores Kelly. Supplementary question.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I know the Minister's very strong commitment to having the Infrastructure Commission in place and having its powers available to it. But unfortunately, with the latest collapse of the Executive, there will undoubtedly be repercussions. I wonder what assessment the Minister has made of those, and more importantly, of the lost opportunities and potential for the economy here to grow.
The absence of a functioning executive will undoubtedly slow or even halt progress, and I think that is an unacceptable position to be in, given the importance of this work and what it will deliver for Northern Ireland. I want to reaffirm my desire, though, to support the TEO group, and I really do hope that tangible progress can be made. I know that members in this chamber and businesses and other organisations across the north want to see this work progress. We can see the benefits that an infrastructure delivers across these islands and across the world, and we should want nothing less for our economy here, for our community and our environment.
I call Liz Kimmins for.
And Corlin, I thank the Minister for her answers so far. Minister, can you elaborate a wee bit more on the work being carried out to determine the best model for the Infrastructure Commission, including its cost and the appointment process? Thank you.
In terms of that piece of work that's being progressed by the Executive Office, an interdepartmental group, working group has been established, and its job is to assess options for how an Infrastructure Commission might be structured, funded and governed, and to determine the best approach to ensure it achieves the objectives and delivers value for money. It will consider the options and then bring forward advice on this matter, and I had really hoped that we would have had an executive that could meet to consider those options and to take an agreed position on it, so that we could move from assessing the role of an Infrastructure Commission to setting up its delivery.
Call Jonathan Buckley.
Deputy Speaker, and again, I welcomed the Infrastructure Commission when it was first announced by the Minister. But given the fact that there is 4 regionally significant applications in the system, 3 of which we know have been in for 100+ weeks, some up to over 350 weeks, does the Minister accept that the planning community and indeed investors have lost confidence in the planning system in Northern Ireland, and as such the lost opportunity was indeed how far right-reaching the review of the Planning Act went?
I think the member has asked a question that is very similar to the first question that was asked and the supplementaries. I have made no secret of the fact that the planning system needs to have significant improvements. I haven't shied away from that. We have brought forward the cross-departmental working group, which is looking at consultee response times. We've also published the findings of the review of the 2011 Act, which has 16 recommendations, one around validation checks, which is something that the business community have been asking for. Another looks at penalties for late consultee responses. So we are continuing to strive to improve it. So, I recognise the need to do this, and while I'm the Minister, I will continue to press for this agenda. What I would say, though, is that as well as having a fit-for-purpose planning system, investors need certainty. Without a government at such a turbulent time, it does not create a context of confidence for investors, and I think that's deeply regrettable.
No comment from the floor, please. I called Kelly Armstrong.
Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, with no executive now able to meet, and as if the rumours are true, won't be meeting for some time after the election, is the Minister considering setting up an infrastructure advisory panel as an interim option to try and achieve some of the objectives that would have been delivered by an infrastructure commission?
The member will recall that the initiation for this piece of work was actually that I had established a ministerial advisory panel to examine the role of and advantages to be delivered by an infrastructure commission here in Northern Ireland. There was overwhelming support for that among the business and the environmental sector. I believe that the optimum approach is having an infrastructure commission that is able to advise the executive on infrastructure in its widest sense. But of course, if that doesn't prove to be possible, then I will have to consider the option of looking at an infrastructure commission that actually just falls within the remit of my department. But I want to say that I think that would be suboptimal in terms of outcomes.
Emma Sheeran, for you cast, I call Emma Sheeran.
Question 3, please.
Following the legal challenge of the asphalt resurfacing contract competition, my department has been working at pace to implement a new interim-term contract strategy to ensure that much-needed resurfacing work is carried out in those areas affected by delays. The new strategy consists of 4 phases with 6 new term contracts in each. Procurement of the first phase is well progressed. This includes contracts for Newry and Mourne, Down, Strabane, Macrofelt, Dungannon and Omagh. Tenders are currently being assessed with award of contracts anticipated in coming weeks. Work on the second phase, which includes contracts for Cookstown, Derry, North Belfast, Ballymena, Armagh and Larne and Carrickfergus, is currently underway, with contracts expected to be awarded in May. The third and fourth phases are scheduled to begin procurement this summer. I can also advise that a £1.3 million contract to resurface part of the Skeow Road in Derry has recently been awarded, and the award of contract to resurface part of the A29 dual carriageway Cookstown is expected shortly. One-off resurfacing contracts for the Coleraine Ring Road and Castle Dawson area are out to tender, and a number of others are in the pipeline for implementation over the coming months.
Cash Brescia, Emma Sheeran. Supplementary question for Emma Sheeran.
And I thank the Minister for her answers. Minister, our rural roads are in a shocking state, and the weather that we've had over the past number of weeks has really shown that up, particularly in my own area in South Derry in mid-Ulster. And it's one of the issues that's constantly raised with me, the state of our roads, as well as the safety concerns that are emanating from the fact that so many of our rural urban areas don't have street lighting on the pavement, something that I've raised with you before. Can I ask what you're doing to ensure the safety of these pavements, and what you're doing to expedite the awarding of those contracts to ensure that the tender is awarded before the end of the mandate and that resurfacing work can happen as soon as possible? Gormagat.
Yes, and I do recognise it's an issue. That's why I have increased the funding to the Rural Roads Initiative by 50%. So there's £17 million in that fund. That's the highest allocation for a specific Rural Roads Initiative to date. In terms of the safety, I want to reassure you that routine safety inspections and subsequent safety-related repairs are still being completed across the network. They are not impacted on by the legal challenge. And I do want to reassure you that officials have been working at pace to develop interim procurement strategies so that we can get the resurfacing works on the ground at the earliest opportunity.
I called Keith Buchanan.
I can thank the Minister so far for answers. Minister, I would like to place on record the work that the section engineer Neil Bratton does in Ulster. A very, very wise head and very broad shoulders, and he takes a lot of the politics and the nonsense out of the whole department, which is good. Has your department and has contractors availability to deliver on the works between now and obviously the end of the financial year, the current rural roads work and going further? Is there contractors out there with the availability to deliver on it?
I want to reassure the member that in the development of the interim procurement strategy, it was done with engagement with the construction sector. In fact, the construction sector itself had asked for an extension so that it could provide all of the information that was required to tender for the contract. So just to reassure you that we continue to have close engagement with the construction industry, because they are vital in terms of making sure that we see this delivery on the ground.
Here, Mayor Justin McNulty cast the car. I called Justin McNulty.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers thus far. Minister, the roads in Uri and Armagh are deteriorating, and I know the Northstone case has been obviously a factor in terms of delays for resurfacing works. Minister, can you give me an update on the investigations following the Northstone case and when we will expect to see further resurfacing works completed in Uri and Armagh?
Well, the original question was about Mid-Ulster. It's at the Minister's discretion to answer.
The issue does have relevance. The issue does have relevance. Members will know that I did come to the House to say that I was concerned about the Northstone judgment, and as a result was initiated an independent investigation. Sarah Hannaford QC is conducting that investigation. I expect to receive a report in coming weeks, and I have committed to coming to the Assembly to provide members with an update on that, and that will take place before the end of the current mandate.
And I call Andrew Muir.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the evidence presented through a recent Assembly question is that decreasing the amount of monitoring round bids from the Department for Roads Maintenance. Why is that, when there are so many cases that MLAs will report to you of the need for maintenance across Northern Ireland, yet the Department is not bidding for the funding that is available?
Well, I would just remind the member, and I have done this in correspondence with them, that this year saw the highest ever capital spend by my department compared to any other department to this point. So we were starting off from a position where we were spending record high levels of amount. The member will also know that throughout the year I did make a number of bids which were unfortunately not successful, but we find ourselves now very close to the end of the financial year, and my department has to operate within managing public money, NI, so we need to make sure that we can get the money spent. But we will always take efforts to ensure that we are maximising capital spend, because we recognise the importance in terms of the critical services that we provide to communities.
Call Robin Newton for a question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Question number 4.
In December 21, I published the Northern Ireland Flood Risk Management Plan 21 to 27, which identifies 12 areas of potential significant flood risk throughout the north. Belfast is the largest of these areas, both in terms of geographical extent and the potential value of economic damage that could be caused by flooding. My department has already been involved in taking forward measures to address flooding in East Belfast. These include the Conswater Community Greenway Flood Alleviation Scheme that provides flood protection for approximately 1,300 properties, and the Glenbrook Flood Alleviation Scheme, which is nearing completion. In addition, specific areas of flood risk in the East Belfast area have also been identified in my department's Living with Water in Belfast plan, which I published in November 21. As part of this, my department, along with Northern Ireland Water, is progressing a suite of modelling studies to fully understand flood risk in East Belfast. This includes models that will identify current and future sewage and wastewater capacity issues. These sewer models will also be integrated with models for the Conswater, Knock and Loop rivers to provide an improved understanding of the flood risk between all drainage systems and support the development of solutions that can address flood risk from multiple sources.
Supplementary for Mr Newton.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that detailed question. Minister, there are many of my constituents who are facing challenges from the insurance industry when they go to renew their house insurance. You have noted the geography of East Belfast, and indeed that East Belfast, perhaps more than any other part of Belfast, is subject to 5 areas of flooding. The tidal, which you've not acknowledged, torrential rainfall, when in 2007 hundreds of homes were flooded. In many places the joint rain and sewage infrastructure is under pressure, and indeed the Sydenham wastewater pumping station, which really urgently needs to be replaced.
Question, please.
Can I ask the Minister, in terms of a joined-up strategy, would she publish that to the residents of East Belfast in order that they can challenge the insurance companies when they are put at risk of higher increased premiums for house insurance?
I'm happy for the member to write with me to set out the details, and I'm certainly happy to see what we can do in terms of supporting residents, being mindful that insurance for homes falls outside the responsibility of my department. There is a flood scheme that I'm sure the member is aware of, that his constituents can avail of. But I want to assure him that, as I had outlined in the previous response, work is ongoing. I accept that there has been delays in terms of the construction of the Sydenham wastewater pumping station. But it is part of the PC21 business plan, and assuming that the budget is available, current timelines indicate the construction for that, and I know it's an important project. The member has been advocating for it for some time, that it is planned to start in spring 24 with final completion scheduled for 26-27.
I call Chris Little.
Infrastructure Minister for her update on East Belfast flood works. The Connswater Community Greenway flood alleviation scheme is a feat of engineering. I am particularly interested if there is any further update with regards to the movement of the Sydenham pumping station to the new site at King George V playing fields, and indeed that the budget is in place for the completion of those works.
I have been advised by Northern Ireland Water that, as I'd said to Mr Newton, that the design of the Sydenham wastewater pumping station had been delayed due to the need to complete the ongoing catchment modelling. The issues in this area of East Belfast cannot simply be resolved by building bigger pipes and a bigger pumping station. We need to manage the flow of water in this area more sustainably and more naturally by trying to stop clean water getting into the sewage network. And this is why we have to take forward the work on the Living with Water programme to develop blue-green solutions alongside hard engineered infrastructure. As I confirmed, the project is included in Northern Ireland Water's Living with Water programme budget requirement and is part of the PC21 business plan, at a current cost estimate of £28 million. Assuming that the budget is available, as it said, the timeline is that construction could start in spring 24 with final completion scheduled for 26-27.
Gemma Dolan for your cast. I call Gemma Dolan.
Minister, I've listened with interest to the work that is going into flood alleviation in parts of Belfast. The community in Bow and my own constituency of Fermanagh and South Tyrone are at their wits' end dealing with the damage, dangerous and seemingly endless flooding issues that are blighting the area. Will you now commit to visiting Bow, to meet with residents and to listen to their concerns in order to better understand their difficulties and start putting solutions in place?
Likewise, Minister, it may be slightly outside your area, but it's at your discretion to answer.
Yeah, look, it's an important issue. It's an important issue affecting residents, and so it's right that I address it. The member will know that the flooding in the Bow area of County Fermanagh usually occurs when water levels in the Sillies River rise after prolonged and heavy rainfall. And my officials have in the past considered a flood alleviation scheme for this area, which would involve the diversion of the river and improve the gradient in this flat and slow-flowing river. Unfortunately, the economic and environmental costs of these proposals far outweigh any benefits in terms of flood alleviation that would be gained. And I understand the cost of any project to alleviate flooding would involve major works costing several millions pounds and far exceed the benefits. And these proposals were presented to the Drainage Council in 2017, and unfortunately no viable flood alleviation scheme was identified. But look, I do recognise that this is frustrating and disappointing to residents, and I have asked my officials to make sure that they are doing all that they can to reduce the potential and impacts of flood risk in the area. And so officials are going to consider what further support can be provided to support the local community, and I'm happy for the member to be kept updated.
And just to remind members that the questions tend to be directed and focused at this case, East Belfast, but it is up to the Minister's discretion whether in this case she answers it. OK, thank you. And I guess Nish Irim Sir Matthew O'Toole. I call Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, clearly the issue of tidal flood alleviation is hugely important given climate change will mean rising sea levels. Could you just underline the importance and significance of the Belfast tidal flood alleviation scheme?
Yes, the Belfast Tidal Flood Alleviation Scheme is a £17 million project to protect 1,500 homes and businesses in the area from the devastation of flooding. It is a critical piece of infrastructure, and I fully understand the concerns that have been expressed locally about the removal of trees. I want to reassure the member that only those trees and shrubs that are essential in terms of the construction of this critical piece of infrastructure are being removed. We also took serious consideration of a potentially different route, but this route for works is actually the one that reduces the impact on the local environment. We have also engaged an independent tree expert who has examined this issue on both occasions, and we have given a commitment to replant at a ratio of 4:1 those essential trees and shrubs that have to be removed. So I recognise the concerns locally, but I have to emphasise this is a critical piece of flood alleviation infrastructure to protect 1,500 homes and businesses.
Very briefly, Roy Beggs.
Minister, mention has been made of the risk of tidal surge, but also there's the issue of flash flooding, and she has a plan in the long term. But what action can be taken in the short term to mitigate against flash flooding so that surges of water do not result in homes being flooded?
Well, a lot of this is contained within the Living with Water programme, and a number of the flood alleviation schemes that we're actually working on are trying to address this issue also. The member may also know that through my Blue-Green Infrastructure Fund that we are funding a number of pilot projects to find natural drainage solutions. I'm mindful of the scheme up in Belfast Castle, for example, which has created ponds to capture the running water coming down off Cave Hill to stop it flowing on and overwhelming our sewers and the consequences that flow from that. So we're trying to come at this from a wastewater perspective, also from the Living with Water in terms of our natural drainage and the capacity to use our environment for that, and also through the Blue-Green Fund as well.
Members, that ends the period for listed questions. We'll now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions, and as question 1 has been withdrawn, I call Claire Sugden. Claire, you're having a lucky day on these number 1s up.
Makes a change, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, what can we do about potholes and other disrepair on roads that don't have any ownership, particularly if they are used frequently by the public and are now becoming dangerous?
The member highlights the issue of the challenges presented by unadopted roads, and a study done several years back identified that at the prices then it would require £300 million to bring streets up to adopted standards, and the member will also know of the financial challenges facing the department and the wider executive. In principle, areas can be brought up to adoption. I know the member has written to me on this before, so you will be aware of the criteria that's involved in terms of frontage and levels of support for that. So where we can, we try to bring things up to an adoptable standard, but certainly the issue of unadopted roads and how that has built up over many, many years is certainly a challenge, not least for people who live in areas where they have to live with this difficulty.
Supplementary question for Claire Sugden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My constituents and my constituency colleagues will be very familiar with a road within East Londonderry, which is causing considerable anxiety, actually, amongst constituents in terms of driving down that road. For, nearly 5 years, I have been trying to work with stakeholders on that road to try and bring it up to an adoptable standard, but the level of disrepair has gotten so severe that it's actually causing other issues, namely in terms of the footpaths and the street signs. Is there any discretion at all within your department where there are extenuating circumstances, i.e. very dangerous roads, where your department could potentially take that work on and then adopt itself?
I suppose that the response from the department is one that we have to have a consistent and fair approach that we adopt right across Northern Ireland. I'm happy if the member wants to write to me specifically. I'm sure you have been engaging closely over quite some time with my officials. I am happy, though, to take a look at it. But I would caveat that in terms of managing expectations, that there is set criteria with which we have to apply fairly and consistently and objectively across Northern Ireland.
Iarmar Colm Gilden, for when you cast a call. Colm Gilden.
Gormahagat Lascan Corlia and Gormahagat Lysenaya. Minister, can you indicate whether your department is considering the establishment of a driving theory test centre in Fermanagh?
This is an issue that the department and the DVA has examined. I suppose the current location of our theory tests is to ensure that they are within a set distance, no matter where you live. In the north. I suppose the second consideration then is balancing up the need for the provision of extra centres and the additional costs that would be incurred by people who are wanting to sit their theory tests. I'm very mindful that at this moment in time people are struggling to make ends meet, Mr Deputy Speaker, be it food bills, energy bills, fuel bills, and so I'm very conscious of taking any decision that would put further additional financial burden, particularly on young people who are that's the cohort that we find going forward for their theory test in the largest number.
Colin Gilden, new supplementary question for Colin Gilden.
And thank the Minister for her answer. And the Minister will know that Fermanagh is the only county in the north that doesn't have a theory test centre, so I would like to see the Department moving towards righting that wrong. There's also huge frustration, Minister, at the current long waits for driving tests, and while I understand that the DVA is planning to hire 16 additional driving examiners, can the Minister provide assurances that some of these examiners will make their way to Fermanagh and other centres so that the backlog is tackled equally across the north?
To address the first issue around driving tests, in just over 9 months since driving tests resumed from April 21 to the 31st of January 2022, the DVA conducted 52,805 driving tests. This is more than 91% of the total number of tests conducted in 2018-19, the last full year when driving tests were not affected by COVID-19 restrictions. And we've been able to achieve that record high level of driving tests because of the additional resources and capacity that we are putting in place. I've forgotten the member's second question, if he wants to quickly remind me.
The 16 DVA new examiners, will those be allocated out in a fair way?
Yeah, so the additional examiners that are being recruited will be allocated based on need and demand for the service. So just to reassure the member of that.
Call Robin Newton.
Sorry. Sorry, Mr Deputy Speaker, you've caught me unawares. I wasn't even aware that I had a second question down. My apologies. My apologies to them. My apologies.
Nice.
Embarrassing.
You're all right, Robin. You're okay. Nice to hear him, Sir Justin McNulty for you, cast. I call Justin McNulty.
The Minister made a very positive announcement recently on 2-year MOTs. This would be warmly welcomed, especially by people and families who are struggling with spiralling costs of living. Minister, can you give us an update?
The member will be aware that we have published the report on the call for evidence for a move to 2-year testing for certain categories of vehicles. There was a significant majority support among the public for a move to biennial testing, and so I have asked my officials to engage with all of the key stakeholders and to explore the steps that are needed to make progress on this matter. It would require change in primary legislation, so that would be something that could be taken forward in the next mandate.
Case Brescia, Justin McNulty, supplementary question for Justin McNulty.
Minister, this is really positive. And today, Minister, you made another very positive announcement in relation to freezing fares, hikes on public transport, and people will be delighted with that in terms of the spiralling cost of living, the impact on them. Minister, does the fall of the executive prevent other parties from putting people first the way you have? And why aren't other parties and their ministers stepping up to the plate and putting people first, not party first, as they've done historically for the last 15 years?
Mr Deputy Speaker, I took the decision to freeze the fares across our public transport network because the truth is that families really are struggling to make ends meet. People are faced with higher food bills, higher energy bills. They're struggling to heat and light their homes. And so I was determined that public transport wouldn't add to that financial burden and the spiralling cost of living. I hope that this decision goes some way to trying to ease pressures on families, because I think there's a responsibility on all of us to do what we can in that area. I'm also hopeful that it will also have an additional benefit of attracting more people onto public transport, because I'm mindful of the increase in petrol and diesel. So more people choosing to use public transport is not only good in terms of improving our air quality, it is good for our environment, but it will also be good for people's pockets.
Call Trevor Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We've heard from your colleague about helping the people, and I have to say you have a disregard for people if you're actually going to do the MOTs every 2 years. However, if you want to help people, Minister, have you any plans to review the taxi licences?
Yes, so the member will know that the Taxi Act was agreed and introduced by this Assembly. Since becoming Minister, I've received a number of requests from people within the wedding car industry, from the funeral industry, also individual drivers, taxi drivers and taxi operators. I'm also clear that there should be a comprehensive review of the Taxi Act to give consideration to all of those requests for changes. With less than 80 days remaining in this mandate, it's not possible to take forward that comprehensive piece of work, as it will involve extensive public consultation and may require primary changes in legislation. And so I've been clear that it needs to be a piece of work that's taken forward in the new mandate. I think that it's long overdue.
Supplementary question for Trevor.
I appreciate, Minister, your acknowledgement in terms of it being overdue. However, it has been long called for. So why is it taking your department so long to actually get to the stage and actually pushing it into the next mandate, as opposed to bringing it forward in this mandate, where we see funeral drivers requiring a taxi licence, or where we see wedding car drivers to require a taxi licence? These same people already have driving licences, and there's no reason that it should take as long as it has.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I met with representatives of the industry and I gave very careful consideration to their requests for change and sought legal advice on it as well. And as I said, I've also received multiple requests for changes to the Taxi Act. I think that the best way of dealing with that, the most comprehensive way of dealing with that, is having a thorough and robust review of the Taxi Act itself. And so that's why I've said that whoever the Minister may be, either myself or any other member in this House, I think it's an important piece of work that should be taken forward in the new mandate.
Keith Archibald on Keshtakar. I call Keith Archibald for a question.
And I thank the Minister for her responses so far. Can I ask the Minister for an update on the road safety strategy to 2030, please?
Yes, my officials have been working very hard on this. They issued a consultation exercise on that. I suppose the challenge here is that the road safety strategy could be considered to be cross-cutting. That would mean that in the absence of an executive being able to meet and agree, we could be looking at a delay on this really important piece of work. I don't think that serves anybody's interests, but I do want to assure the member that I will continue to take action to improve road safety, be it the 20 miles per hour outside schools, the mobile phone use while driving penalties that have been introduced as well, and the changes around drink driving. So I will continue to do that, but I do think it is deeply regrettable that without an executive we may not be able to produce and complete a road safety strategy.
Keith Archibald, supplementary question for Keith Archibald.
And I thank the Minister for her response, and I would obviously share that concern. It's obviously important in any new strategy that we have robust targets, and I note in the draft strategy for 2030 the target to reduce those killed in collisions had actually decreased from 60% to 50% compared to the strategy to 2020. So I just wanted to get the Minister's view on that and whether she's considering strengthening that target following the consultation.
We're giving very careful consideration to all of the responses to that consultation exercise, and the member is right. That target was highlighted within the consultation response, and there was a variance of views provided on that, so we're giving careful consideration to it. I do want to assure the member, though, that I want to make sure that we have ambitious targets within the strategy that we can work to deliver on, so our careful consideration of that is ongoing.
Agus tá looking if on you cast gasto Carol Nichola. I call Carol
Nichola. Minister, could you provide a brief update on what's happening with the York Street Interchange, please?
I thank the member for her question. The member will know that I'd conducted an independent assurance test review of it to ensure that the York Street Interchange is fit for purpose, that it sits with the executive strategies and also with the Boulder Belfast vision as well, and that we make sure that it takes cognizance of the climate emergency. I'm also very clear that as well as making sure that the scheme works for those who will use it, that it also needs to work for the people who live in and around it. Consultants were engaged to look at place shaping and how we could improve that. They have provided me with the report, and now at this stage what we're doing is we're engaging with local stakeholders to get their views, because I very much want this to be a piece of work done in partnership. I was able to present some of the initial findings to the Healthy North Belfast meeting recently, and as soon as that engagement is complete, then I will hopefully be in a position to publish the report, and then we can move very quickly to the next steps.
Okay, Brescia, Caroline Cullen.
Thanks. Just want to thank the Minister for that quick update, and I'm pleased that she is now at the final stage where hopefully she will publish a report before her time in office. Can the Minister confirm that this will be the case?
I'm very keen that we are able to publish this as soon as possible. I also think that it's really important, though, that we do have that engagement with local stakeholders and the local community as well. So that's the piece of work that's ongoing. As soon as that's complete, then I will be moving to publish the report and clearly identifying the next steps for this hugely strategic and important project.
Members, time's up, so just take your ease while we move to the next item, please.